Welcome, ASALH members, my clients, guests, and friends. I'm your host, Tiby Saunders. I'm a financial advisor and wealth manager at Cetera Investors. I'm based out of the Philadelphia office, but like many people, I've been mainly working from home. I'm so happy to be with you today in this wonderful ASALH event. I'm excited to participate. I'm excited for our session today. Of course, I would love to be in a big conference center with you today and to shake your hands, share hugs, and do the things we've always done. But now, a year and a half in the pandemic, we've learned to do our best with technology, and we will still accomplish a lot in the next 2 hours. I would like to thank you for joining me today, despite of the circumstances of us having to meet in this virtual forum. But on a lighter note, what we save in transportation, hotel accommodation, food expenses, you can share the savings with someone to give them a membership to join ASALH, like your pastor, civil leader, center of influence, your medical professional, a diversity and inclusion officer, and now there are plenty. This will allow you and ASALH to grow this wonderful organization over the next 100 plus years. Now, I need to ask you to do me a favor, but no, I'm not going to ask you to write a check out, but please enter your contact information in the private Zoom Q&A directed to me. My compliance department informed me that we still require an attendance role. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Now, I've dedicated over 30 years of my professional life working with individuals, institutions, and businesses to help them identify their financial needs and goals. I'm very passionate about helping my clients to attain their financial goals and to be able to live the lifestyle they want in retirement and to be able to leave a legacy. Now, here's what you can expect from our session today. All right, let's turn the clock back and look at how we got here. Now, I briefly will delineate about my ancestor, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and my family's connection, as well as tell my story. And I will share with you some information on retirement strategies and legacy planning, along with my 2 special guest speakers from Prudential, a very well-regarded insurance institution that didn't take any bailout money back in the Great Recession in 2009. After they go over some strategies and solutions they offer, which I personally think can be great for a lot of people, I will come back and deliver a talk on retirement planning. First, I would like to share with you 3 quotes by the founder, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, that are appropriate for this event. And that is, you must give your own story to the world. And here I find myself today doing exactly that. The next quote, for me, education means to inspire people to live more abundantly, to learn to begin with life as they find it and make it better. And that's what I hope to bring value to you to make things better. And the last but not least, the mere imparting of information is not education. Above all things, the effort must result in him being able to think and do for himself, end of quote. And he clearly meant to empower oneself to take action. And this is the reason why I felt so compelled to participate in this year's forum. Now, just some background information on my family. They were related to Dr. Carter G. Woodson through my great-grandfather, William Andrew Woodson, born in 1887. He was a farmer, a husband, a father of 12, and they lived in New Kent, Virginia, which is approximately 82 miles from Canton, Virginia, the home of both he and Dr. Carter G. Woodson. My father was his first grandchild, and his oldest daughter was my great aunt, May Virginia Woodson Roberts, born in 1911. And she moved to New York City as a child to live with her mother's sister, Aunt Maggie Mapp. Now, Aunt May was a fashion designer in New York City, and her friend was a fashion designer and the curator of the Harlem Museum, Lois Alexander, who wrote the book, Blacks in the History of Fashion. And it was noted on page 119 that May Virginia Woodson Roberts was the niece of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, And on page 67 through 69, ASALH was mentioned for the fashion event hosted by the Detroit chapter in 1979. Excuse me, please. Thank you. The Woodsons were taught that owning real estate and other investments were very important, and they believe in transferring wealth to their heirs. Even today, land from my great-grandfather is owned by his descendants. Now, let me tell you my story. My story begins with my parents who met in Richmond, Virginia. They got married, had 5 children, and I'm the youngest. We relocated to the Philadelphia area in 1965, but we returned to the Virginia area every summer to spend time with our family. After meeting Aunt May at a family reunion as a teenager, she inspired me and became my role model. She was affiliated with the Hampton University, and I stayed with her in New York City during the summer breaks. She sponsored my first trip to Coney Island with my cousin in New York, and that was so memorable, it inspired me to bless others, which I continue to do today. I was educated in the Philadelphia school system, and I was very active in high school, and I received recognition for at my graduation for being one of the most outstanding students. And after graduating, I went to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I was very active there too. I was on the concert committee, and we had Peaches and Herb and Count Basie and his orchestra and political activist Bobby Seals and many other well-known trailblazers, which taught me the value of providing diverse services to others. I studied art history as an elective at IUP and had the opportunity to travel to Europe and receive credit for it. That was a wonderful adventure and created a major life-changing impact on myself. I enrolled in the ROTC program, the Reserve Officer Training Corps at IUP, to acquire the skills necessary for leadership. I was awarded a sharpshooter's marksmanship certificate for the highest score of all the cadets in my class. And I was the first woman of color to complete the ROTC program at IUP for the United States Army Reserves. After graduating IUP in 1980, I moved to New York City to live with my aunt on Strivers Road in historical Harlem. I joined the United States Army Reserves as a lieutenant in the quartermaster unit, and I served 10 years between New York and Atlanta, Georgia. In the quartermaster unit, we handled the supplies and logistics for the United States Army field operations. We provided all the food service supplies, field showers, and other equipment to support our troops. I had several major leadership roles, which included the company commander's executive officer in New York. And when the company commander was absent, I trained the troops, and that occurred more than a few times. I was able to meet other military officers during an event at West Point, and I was introduced to an executive with Equitable Life Insurance Company. And after a brief conversation, they offered me a job, and I worked there in their securities accounting department. I was responsible for the securities accounting for their pension portfolios, and I stayed with them for over 3 years. I became intrigued by the operation and their process and decided to stay in the industry. I remember when Apple dropped to $1 a share in 1982. While the majority were unloading their shares, I saw the potential of this company and I acquired a few, but unfortunately, I didn't hold them for 40 years. I stayed with Equitable, as I said, for 3 years in New York, and then during that time, I was immersed with the cultural activities, the arts, the museum, the theater, the concerts, the opera house, and many other events with my aunt. We traveled to several places, including Canada, with the Hampton University Club. I also attended my first debutante ball since my aunt made several gowns for some of the participants. And in 1983, Equitable offered me a position to transfer to Atlanta with their real estate accounting division. And of course, I discussed this with my family, including my aunt. She encouraged me to seize the moment to explore the Southern cultures and broaden my horizon. So I moved to Atlanta because they offered me a mortgage package and other economic benefits. The Equitable Real Estate Division made significant investments, and I maintained the accounting records. So I knew the transactions that were profitable and their losses. For many of you who live in Atlanta, our office was across from the Lenox Mall, and that was a great location. But after doing the routine job, closing out the books on a daily basis to the penny, it became too routine and not challenging enough. So I decided in '87 that it was time to move on. And I worked as an account executive with a brokerage firm in Atlanta. And this was a wonderful period in my life. My manager knew everybody in Atlanta, and I had the opportunity to meet JFK Jr., Mayor Andrew Young, and other well-known respected personalities in Atlanta. I continued to serve in the United States Army Reserves while I was in Atlanta. And this was not like the great diversified unit in New York. It was very different experience because they weren't accustomed to saluting females of color. So now let me tell you about my family. I met my husband in Atlanta and we relocated back to Philadelphia by 1989. A month later, I started my career with First Investors and stayed with them until they transferred over into Cetera Investors in 2019. I will discuss our services offered through Cetera and how we help you with retirement strategies and legacy planning in the next segment after you hear from my two guest speakers. Now back to my story. We have two wonderful children, a daughter and a son, and a grandson who's 12. And he's very technologically savvy. I mean, he's very tech savvy. He taught me quite a few things about my cell phone and other stuff. But my daughter is a mortgage loan officer, and she obtained her bachelor's degree from the University of Delaware in economics. But let me tell you how she got there. When she was about in the 10th grade, we had a serious conversation about what she wanted to do after graduation. And she thought at the time that she wanted to do hair because that was very popular then. We talked about the potential income and whether or not she would own her own business or just work there, what it would take to own your own business, that she needed a business plan and strategy so she could obtain a loan. And we discussed the kind of lifestyle and whether she wanted to rent or own a home, what type of car, vacation, savings, shoes and bags, etc. So we discussed the cost of living and reviewed the proposed expenses. But we took it a step further. We went out to see the various places so she could understand exactly the things she wanted to acquire and what it would cost. And after a conversation, she agreed that she needed to attend college and she wanted to earn a net after taxes because she wanted to earn a net after taxes somewhere around $6,000 a month to have the lifestyle that she desired. So by the 11th grade, she was in the advanced placement program at her school. And then she attended Columbia University Summers program. And this was an excellent learning experience for her. This exposure at Columbia University provided many offers from Ivy League schools with partial scholarships, but she decided to attend the University of Delaware. And she lived in an apartment. She held down a job as a top sales rep selling cars. And after graduation, she stayed at home and we gave her 2 years rent free so she could buy a home. And she bought her first home at 24 and a half. And she beat me by 6 months as a first-time home buyer. And she told me, she said, Mom, I have one up on you. And I told her, no, you don't. You have a few up on me because you finished calculus as a freshman. But she made a great career choice during the mortgage crisis that occurred in 2009. Now, my son, he has a genetic disability. He has Down syndrome, but he's doing great. I remember when he was born, they told me in the hospital about Down syndrome. And I said, give me a book, let me read it. And I read it while I was in the hospital. I prayed to God that he would beat the odds, and he heard me. Now my son, after he completed high school, he was invited to participate in the program at the University of Delaware. And when he went on the interview, They showed him everything, the campus and where he would attend classes. And this was for a program called Classic, Careers Life Skills Certificate Program. And when he sat down at the table with them after touring the campus, they asked him if he had any questions. And he said, yes, just one thing. He told them, my sister went to this college and I always wanted to go to college. And I prayed to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I asked him if I could go to college. And I beg you to give me just one chance, one chance. And I tell you, I was a little teary-eyed. And he, 3 days later, they said yes. And he graduated from the Classic program in 2018. And they really loved my son. And they found a job for him at the University of Delaware. And he's working there today for Aramar. So I'm really excited about what he has accomplished. And what I like to do now is that's my story. That's my story, so that you know a little bit about me. But what I like to do right now is to take a moment and just give you some background information on my investment side. Now, I received my securities license in '87. And this allows me to offer any types of security products, including corporate securities, municipal funds, option, direct participation program, investment company products, and variable products to create solutions for my clients' needs and concerns. Later, I will share with you my website and we'll discuss some of the services and benefits and plans and things that I'm able to provide for you. But right now, I would like to mention that with regards to the financial industry, there are many people of color that do not consider this as a career choice. So I invite you to challenge people that you care about that have a degree in finance, economics, or business, who are on the fence about a career change, or even representatives who have a current investment practice, or perhaps even your attorney or CPA, to contact me to perhaps discuss some of the opportunities that we offer at Cetera. And we're growing our teams, so this would be a great chance for others to consider this industry. So what we're going to talk about next, we're going to have one of my guest speakers, Mr. Herb Phillips, who's been in the industry for over 26 years with Prudential. He is very well-versed and knows the annuity business. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Herb Phillips.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Tiby, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and what an inspiring story. I really appreciate you, and I'm really happy for the opportunity to spend the next 20 to 25 minutes with everybody. As Tiby pointed out, my name is Herb Phillips. I represent Prudential, and what we're going to try to do today is just help you understand some of the challenges that are often overlooked in the financial services industry. So I want you to kind of go into this program thinking that it's going to be very educational based. And our goal is to have you take away a lot of the challenges that you're going to face as pre-retirees and retirees, and challenge yourself to talk to a professional like Tiby that's been in the business a while. You heard her story, to then figure out how you can overcome those challenges for your particular retirement needs. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we call the retirement red zone at Prudential. And the red zone is a critical time where it's the 5 years before you retire and the 5 years after you retire. We call it the red zone. And the reason why we do that is because a lot of things can go wrong in that 5 and 5 period that we want to make sure that you're familiar with, and make sure that you're going to be comfortable with those challenges and how to overcome them and how to face them. So in today's program, we're going to uncover 3 items. We're going to talk about retirement, what it looked like yesterday and what it looks like today. We're going to then talk about some of the challenges that I discussed in the red zone. And then lastly, how you can work with a financial professional like Tiby to manage those red zone challenges to make sure that your retirement is fulfilled based on all the hard work that you put in over your lives and your careers. This is one of my favorite charts that I get to talk about in the industry because it really sets the stage on what Americans are faced with today versus what it was like yesterday. So what I ask you to do is just look at the pyramid on the left-hand side. This is a retiree maybe 30 years ago. And if you look at the bottom of that pyramid, you're going to see that the pension was the foundation of that American's source of income. If you think back, parents, grandparents, family members, a lot of folks entered into retirement with a promise from the company that they worked for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to give them a check for the remainder of their retirement via pension. If you look at the second level of that pyramid, you're going to see Social Security. And that's a form of income, a source of income that Americans can count on during the course of their retirement. But what I really want everybody to focus on is two things here. The way it was years ago is that an American would enter into retirement with two guaranteed sources of income, one from their employer, one from the government. And they entered into retirement with a form of confidence and stability, knowing that a lot of their bills are going to be paid from these sources. And if you notice at the tip of that pyramid, you're going to see the nest egg made up a very small portion of that financial pyramid. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, the two guaranteed sources actually help them pay their bills with a lot of confidence, as I pointed out. And the second, and it's unfortunate, but people didn't live as long then as people are living today. It was very uncommon for you to see somebody live into their hundreds. And you're seeing that more and more today as folks see advancements in medicine, and folks are worried about diets. And, I always joke, you go into a supermarket, you think you're in a library because everybody's reading the back of the labels to see the nutrients in a product and how healthy it is. So that has a lot to do with the way the pyramid looked like years ago. And if you look at the pyramid today, you're going to see that it's reversed, upside down. And the reason be it is if you look at the foundation here, the pension plays a very small piece in the overall equation now. And the reason why is companies do not want to be able to, or not that they don't want, they can't afford to pay pensions to their employees for the life expectancies and the longevity issues that we're having in today's marketplace. So what happens next? Well, the Social Security piece is going to still continue to be there, and that's going to be a form of guaranteed income. But if you look at the top, that's going to move most of the income requirements in a client's or an American's retirement. It's going to be the nest egg. How much were you able to save in retirement plans? How much were you able to save in your personal accounts? Because that money has to last a lifetime, knowing that that pension is not going to be there for a lot of folks going forward. So just a great visual to understand where we were, where we are today, and how some of these challenges come into fruition. So let's jump into the challenges. What are these challenges that I've been referring to? Well, the number one challenge that everybody's aware of is the markets. Yes, the markets are going to bring us a form of challenges each and every day, whether we're looking at the stock market or we're looking at the bond market or a combination of the two. The second major challenge is rising costs, inflation. If you just think about healthcare costs, how they have astronomically gone up over the years, it's at an alarming pace. And I have a family, it's my wife and I have two young children, 12 and 14, and we need very little care. And just watching over the last 5 years, how my outlay for health insurance has gone up, it's just astronomical. And here's a family that we are blessed. We don't have a lot of healthcare issues and we don't have a lot of healthcare bills, but yes, the costs for our health insurance needs just continue to rise. And then the third point, I touched on it very briefly, but we're going to look a little further at that, is people are living longer than any generation in time. And the question is, how much do you need each year from your retirement nest egg to pay your bills, to then make sure that that lines up with your life expectancy. And that's something that a financial advisor like Tiby can do a financial plan with you and figure out what those numbers are and how you can live comfortably with what you were able to save. So we're going to jump into market risk. So we're going to do a little education around some terminology around market corrections and bear markets, so on and so forth. So you may hear the term market correction. And what a market correction is, it's a 10% loss from the most recent peak. So anything at 10%, they're going to say it's a market correction. We've seen a number, almost 30 market corrections since 1945. So this is what the market does. It goes down and then it recovers and it grows from there. Now from the 26 market corrections plus that we've had, a number of them have turned into a bear market. And if you look at the statistic, almost half of them have become bear markets. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what's a bear market versus a correction? So correction is a market loss of 10%. A bear market is a 20% loss. And it was interesting, if we look at what we call the coronavirus correction, that was almost a 35% loss in a very short amount of time, last February, March, April of last year. And it's recovered astronomically well since that occurred. Just to share with you a couple numbers. So the market went down almost 35%. And from the low of last year to just recently, the market has doubled. So yes, we had some, really tough times with the market, correcting and going into bear territory, but it's recovered astronomically. I'm going to share with you some examples of that as well. So the average bear market, you can see the loss from 1945 is on average around 35%. Now, what folks like Bloomberg tells us is that a retiree will face about 4 bear markets during the course of their retirement. And what you have to think to yourself is, while you're retired, you're no longer working, you no longer have income from your employer, and you can no longer save money in the market. And what you have to ask yourself is, when these bear markets hit, am I going to be equipped from a mindset perspective to make sure that I stay the course so that when it does recover, I'm there for that recovery? And then last but not least, a bear market lasts almost a year and a half. So hopefully that education is helpful. The next segment is going to be more around mathematics. And this segment's around, if I lose money in the market, what do I need to get back to even? And I kind of done this with some friends and some family members, just kind of in a playful way, where I'll say to somebody, if you lose 20% of your money in the market, what type of return do you need to get back to even? And without them thinking and going through the mathematics, they're like, well, if I lose 20% in the market, I need 20% to get back to even. But the true mathematics tell us, if you lose 20% in the market, the recovery to get back to even is more, and you need 25%. Now that gets really significant when you look to the bottom right-hand part of that chart. When the loss is at 50%, you need 100% recovery to get back to even. And I'll share with you the math around that. So if you have a $100,000 portfolio and it goes down 50%, so that 100,000 is going to drop to 50,000. To get, if you get a 50% return and it's worth 50,000, that only gets you back to 75. So you need your money to double from 50 to 100 to get back to even, which then requires 100% return. So just some mathematics to kind of think about. So I had mentioned, these 4 market or bear markets that you're probably going to face in retirement. The question is, can you stay the course? Can you be confident to let your money stay in the market to then recover? If you look in the bottom left-hand side of the chart under Black Monday, market was down 20%. Over the subsequent 5 years, it grew from 26 to 84% over that 5-year period. So it more than recovered. If you look at the second chart, the dot-com bubble, down 43%. 5 years later, your money would have doubled or closely doubled based on the bottom of the market. If you look at the Great Recession that Tiby really laid out nicely, market was down from its top to its bottom, 54%. And that goes in hand in glove with the statistic that I just shared with you. If it's down 50, you need 100 to get back to even. If you look at 5 years later in this chart, it was up 177%. So not only did you make up what you lost, you then recovered and were making money again. This is a terrific slide because it really shows the effects of the 5 years going into retirement. That's around the red zone notion that what happens the 5 years before is critical, and can you stay the course to know that you're going to be okay long term. So what I want to share with you here is a client that's 5 years away from retirement. They have a $500,000 portfolio, and their intended retirement is 5 years from today. If you look at the chart, the first 2 years, the market has gone up really nicely, 12% and then 10%. So the 500,000 grew to 616. And I can tell you, as any investor, you're feeling pretty good. You're making money and you're saying, wow, this is terrific. The market's going to keep driving this 616 forward. And I'm 3 years away and I'm going to retire so comfortably. It's going to be terrific. And then what happens? The next 2 years, the market declines. It's down 19% and 15%. So now this 616 is down to 424, less than it was 4 years prior. And now this investor has 1 year away to their anticipated planned retirement. So if we look at the third box, 1 year to go, the client has significantly less money in her portfolio than she did at the high point. She wants to retire on time. So she's got a tough decision to make. Delay her retirement for the recovery to happen. Hope for an unrealistic recovery of 45% in 1 year to get us back to the 616. Or realistically, reallocate the financial plan and take a look and say, if I want to retire on time and I get a realistic rate of return of, let's say, 8 to 10%, can I plan to retire on time with a lesser standard of living? This could happen to any of us at any time, and it's timing that we can't control. But with the right financial plan, the right advisor at the helm, it's going to help us understand that this could be a challenge. And if it does happen, what can we do to overcome that from becoming a reality that we don't want to see through? So another risk that we talk about quite a bit in our industry is interest rate risk. Now, when it comes to interest rate risk, there's a lot to be focused on. The one thing that I focus on is if you're a home buyer right now. I was looking at interest rates on buying a home right now. If you entered into a 15-year mortgage, you would get a 2% interest rate. We're talking historic lows. So if you're buying a home, you're buying a car, this is a great interest rate environment to be in if you're that type of person. But if you happen to be a retiree and you're living off of a fixed income, and you may have invested in CDs before, you may have invested in money markets before, you can see with this chart that bonds, CDs, and cash have dramatically dropped over the last 35 years, which is great for the home buyer, great for the auto buyer, but really horrific for the investor that's counting on that fixed income to help them pay their bills. Now, I'll share with you the real impact. We're going to share with you an example around $100,000. And if you had $100,000 invested in 2000, the year 2000, 21 years ago, interest rates were around 6.5%. So a retiree that had $100,000 in capital would be able to afford taking $6,580 in income from that $100,000, a very realistic income stream off of that amount of money. If we fast track to 2007, you can see the income based on interest rates dropping went from $6,500 to just under $4,700. Okay, that's a pay cut that a lot of people would not be able to stomach, but it's still in the realm. We're almost getting $5,000 a year on $100,000 investment of investable dollars. If we fast track to today, 2021, interest rates are fluctuating, but let's call it 1%. You've got an investor investing $100,000 with a yield of say 1%, now they're able to take out $1,000 from that portfolio, where they were able to take $6,500 off of that block of money 21 years ago. I'm going to put it a little bit more in today's reality. In my travels, I'm blessed to see a lot of folks that enter into retirement, and I'm going to use the word millionaires. They'll come to me, they'll say, Herb, I did my savings, I'm a millionaire, and I'm ready to go into retirement. Here's the shock that these investors have. I don't want to take any risk, is what they say. I just want to invest in bonds and CDs. So if you're a millionaire and you're getting 1% on your money, that's $10,000, not a month, but a year. You would get under $1,000 a month to pay your bills. And the investor looks at me in awe and they say, oh my gosh, Herb, I'm a millionaire and you're telling me I could take out under $1,000 a month? Well, based on the interest rate environment, if you went that route, that's the reality of where we are today. And that's a critical pivoting point on understanding why it's important to work with a true financial professional and a true great market leader like Satara and Tiby to help you navigate through these types of scenarios where she can come to you with other alternatives other than maybe that $10,000 a year scenario that may not cut it for your personal retirement. You can't go through a financial presentation without talking about behavior. And this is a very telling slide on what the market does versus what an investor does. So if we look at the last 20 years, and we're talking about the stock market, we're talking about all different markets, not just the stock market, from 1999 to 2019. If you look to the far left, high yield bonds averaged per year 7.9%. That was the place to be. If you look at the next bar chart, the S&P did a little over 6% per year. If you fast track it to the second to last bar, you're going to see that the average investor did 2.5%. And I'm going to share with you why. We went through the equation that the average investor is going to face a number of market corrections and they're going to face a number of bear markets. And hopefully our slides proved that after those markets decline, the recovery is vast. But what happens with the average investor, emotions get involved. They get afraid of how much more can I lose? How I don't want to take this anymore. Get me out of the market and sell me out. Now, the challenge with trying to market time, you have to be right twice. You have to be right on when to get out and you have to be right on when to get back in. And as you can see clearly with this chart, the average investor didn't get out at the right time in most cases and didn't get back in at the right time because they severely were underperforming stocks and bonds in this example. So that just tells you staying invested the long haul is going to win the test of time. So we know that inflation is always an issue. And I'll share with you a personal story and then we'll move away from inflation because everybody's familiar with it. My son just entered into high school and he's 14 years old. And I remember like it was yesterday, I would go out and do programs like this with my financial advisors at night to educate Americans on some of the challenges they face. And I would always get the text on my way home from my wife, can you stop and get milk? And I remember back then starting out and I would buy a gallon of milk. It was $2.89. Then it was $2.99. Then it was $3.09. And gradually as he got into, his toddler years, it went up little by little. Now, if you go buy a gallon of milk, it's going to be close to $5 a gallon. I didn't personally feel that in my pocket because as I've been working, my job has been growing, I've been growing, and we've been able to keep up with inflation. The moral of this story here is if you're a retiree on a fixed budget and interest rates continue to drop and you don't stay invested long-term in the market, how are you going to be able to overcome the challenge of inflation when we see the incremental change in just groceries over time? Leading us into the next topic, healthcare. We know that this is an ongoing challenge with a lot of pre-retirees and retirees. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here other than I want you to see a couple numbers that are a little startling. These numbers are brought to us by our friends at Fidelity Investments who manage money in a lot of our financial programs. What Fidelity tells us is that the average American couple, I should say, age 65, will spend almost $300,000 of out-of-pocket costs to pay for medical expenses over their lives. What are we talking about medical costs? We're talking about routine doctor visits. We're talking about prescriptions. We're going to talk about procedures. We're going to talk about going into the hospital. That's a big sum of money that we need to be prepared for. What it does not include is long-term care costs. And that in itself is a elephant in the room that nobody wants to discuss, because if you wind up in a long-term care facility in today's day and age, it's going to cost between $80,000 to $100,000 per year. And one of the ways, if you want to overcome that risk, is you can look at long-term care insurance. We're not here to sell you any type of programs, life insurance, long-term care, annuities. This is the goal around this, is to have you understand some of the risks and some of the ways to overcome those risks. And I'm sure Tiby is very, very versed in all three of those product lines in her business, and she would be able to help you navigate some of those issues. So we're going to come to longevity risk now. And longevity risk, as I pointed out in the pyramid, what we're seeing is that Americans are living longer than any other generation in time. Okay, what I want everybody to notice here is there's a good chance for a man to live between 88 and 93. It's good. There's a chance that a woman can live between 90 and 95, but they're just numbers. What I really want you to focus on is the fact that when you decide to go to your employer and you tell that employer that you're going to retire, what you're really doing is using a fancy word of telling your employer that you're going to go unemployed for the next facet of your life, because retirement is nothing more than a fancy word of saying you're unemployed. And I really want you to think about it this way. If you're retired, say for 20 years, and there's 12 months in a year, okay, that's 240 months that you're going to continue to need to pay your bills without a paycheck from your employer. And that's where you need to be financially savvy and equipped with a financial plan and with an advisor that's going to help you navigate through that financial plan. When it comes to taking money out of a portfolio, I kind of alluded to this when I used that $1 million example. Hey, Herb, I'm a millionaire. 1% I can take, 10,000 a year. Well, Wade Fowle, one of our industry leaders that does a lot of research and a lot of educational papers in our financial industry, he says in 2020 that a safe withdrawal rate is 2.1%. So that means your stocks, your bonds commingled. Okay, you want to take money out to pay your bills. 2.1% is a safe withdrawal rate. Some will argue differently, but this gentleman, we take his opinion really seriously. But from $1 million perspective, that's $21,000 per year that you can spend on $1 million, or every million that you're blessed to save. So we're kind of coming to the end here, and we're going to talk about managing risks. And at Prudential, we came up with this acronym called ART. And if you're an investor and you're planning for retirement, or you're in retirement, there's 3 ways that you can manage risk. The first way is you can say, hey, I don't want to take any risk. I've saved my money. I don't want to lose any of it. So what I choose to do is put my money in safe bonds, CDs, and cash. And you can tell by the interest rate environment that we're in most of the slides that I covered, interest rates are lower right now than inflation. So what's going to happen is you're not going to, per se, lose a lot of money from an investment perspective, but you're going to lose purchasing power in the future. But that's a way that you can go. You can avoid risk and buy CDs, bonds, and keep your money in cash. The second way that you can do it is you can retain risk. Build a portfolio that you're comfortable with, stocks, bonds, rebalance it accordingly, and know over time the market's going to go up and it's going to go down, and you're going to revisit it and not make rash decisions based on the market correcting and trying to get in and out at the wrong times. So the first way you can do it is avoid it. The second way you can do it is retain that risk. The third way that you can do it is you can transfer that risk. And we're very fortunate at Prudential that we build financial instruments in the annuity space and I'm just going to give you a high level aspect of it. There's a lot of companies that do what we do, but we're very proud based on a comment that Tiby made earlier. In the 2009 credit crisis, we basically did not take any government money to keep our operations going, and we sustained our liabilities and moved forward like a true big corporation would. But some of the aspects of what we're able to do to overcome some of these risks that we've been talking about is maybe set up a program that pays you income for life. You get to take some of your money, invest it into a guaranteed annuity, and build that pension that you're probably not going to have via a variable annuity or a fixed annuity with a guaranteed income for life that's going to pay you a certain check every single month for as long as you live. And those checks can't go down. So that's one way that you can do it. A second way that you can do it is through financial instruments that when the market's up, you're going to participate. When the market's down, you're going to be protected up to a certain level. Could be 5% protection. It could be 10. It could be 15. It could be 20. It could be 100% protection. So what we're trying to do at Prudential is build financial programs to help retirees and pre-retirees retire with confidence and with dignity. So to summarize, we started out with a terrific chart, the pyramids. That's one visual that I'd like everybody to take away today. That visual that years ago, that pension was the foundation. Today, it's not so. We uncovered a lot of market risks, how we can navigate them. We talked about inflation. We talked about people living longer. Another key takeaway is when you enter into retirement, think of it as retirement. You've accomplished it. You should be proud. But you have to understand that retirement is nothing more than a nice way of saying you're going to be unemployed for a long period of time. And do I have the right financial plan to navigate all these uncertainties that we uncovered today? So on behalf of the annuity division at Prudential, I want to thank everybody for being with us today. We can open it up for questions before I turn it over to Tiby to introduce our next speaker and my colleague, Adam. So at this point, we were able to open it up for questions. Terrence, any coming in at this point? Well, what I will promise everybody is you can utilize our team, Tiby, as a resource. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to Tiby. We'll be happy to set up a conference call or a Zoom to make sure that we answer any questions that you have and try to get you onto that safe track to a successful retirement. So with that, I thank everybody for their time, and I'm going to turn it back over to Tiby for the rest of the program.
Thank you, Herb. That was an excellent presentation. I mean, you covered all the bases. So now we will present to you Adam Broadman. He's been in the industry for a few decades. He's the regional life insurance VP for the Northeast Eastern region. He covers 4 states. He has a terrific background. He has a wealth of knowledge. And I would like to, at this time, introduce him to you. I thank you so much for joining us today. He's going to share with you the holistic approach and the legacy planning aspect of insurance, because a lot of time people hear life insurance, but really with today's environment, you need to have a holistic approach. So without further ado, Adam, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Tiby. Thanks, Herb. Before I start, just a quick shout out to University of Delaware. You can see my blue hen pop socket there. My daughter is a sophomore at University of Delaware. Pretty challenging there right now. Very few classes are in person. Most of it's online, but you know, college students will manage. They'll make the best of it. So today I am going to hold on a second here. Today I am going to talk about a strategy called Legacy Advantage. And Legacy Advantage is a asset reposition strategy using life insurance. Now, I think everyone who watches the news, pays attention to the news, and reads financial publications, you're hearing every single day about government tax proposals, increases in taxes all across the board, whether it's an increase in income tax or estate tax. So the Legacy Advantage asset reposition strategy really focuses on a change in the tax law that occurred last year, actually, I think even the year before, called the Secure Act. And one of the items that the Secure Act addressed was the concept of leaving an IRA to your heirs as a legacy asset. You know, oftentimes we come across clients who have perhaps a pension, other savings, annuities, sources of income, and they usually have an IRA of some amount of money. And the IRA happens to be the asset that in most cases becomes the one they're not going to spend, because their advisors have always said, hey, save your IRA for the end. Wait until you're retired. Wait until your tax rate, your income tax rate is the lowest that it will be theoretically when you're retired, and spend that last. And the IRA becomes the asset that folks leave to their children and or grandchildren. Well, the Secure Act had a provision in it whereby if an IRA is the inherited asset, the beneficiary can no longer keep that for a very long period of time. The tax law says that an IRA that's inherited must be liquidated within 10 years. So that presents a challenge in how to deal with the income tax that's going to come from that. So the Legacy Advantage strategy is going to address what an option is to do with that IRA asset to enhance the legacy and perhaps reduce the amount of tax that comes from it. So we're going to talk about three things. Herb and I, working for the same company, always talk about three things. So the three things in my presentation are going to be who is the Legacy Advantage strategy for? How does it work? And then we're going to go through a case study. So the Legacy Advantage strategy is designed for consumers who are age 59 and a half and family oriented, right? 59 and a half primarily because that's the age where you can start taking money from an IRA without having to pay a penalty on it. This is for your clients who have a minimum net worth of $1 million and who already have sufficient liquid assets to support their retirement income. Very important that you would never want to be advising a client who's going to rely on their IRA for retirement income to enter into the Legacy Advantage strategy. It's specifically for clients that have developed a financial plan that suggests they have enough money for retirement with other sources and that the IRA is going to be a legacy asset. And certainly they're interested in leaving more of a legacy for their children and grandchildren. Okay, so we've identified who the strategy is for. So we're going to talk about how it works. Herb touched on a few of these items, and I'm going to happily repeat them. There are threats that exist to your legacy, and there are threats that exist to your retirement. The two biggest threats are those of taxes and chronic illness. And Herb discussed both from an annuity perspective, and now, of course, from a life insurance perspective. The impact of taxes on an IRA are such that if you look in the past, a beneficiary could inherit an IRA and stretch it for their entire life. and take required minimum distributions over their entire lifetime. And in many cases, an inherited IRA, the value could be stretched and magnified multiple times, because the required minimum distributions on an inherited IRA would be much less than for someone who is already in their 70s. And now, with the limit of 10 years, whereby if you inherit an IRA, for example, I have two brothers, we're all in our 50s. Our mother is 80 years old. She has an IRA. We are equally beneficiaries of her IRA. If she passes away and we inherit it, we must liquidate it within 10 years, whether we take it all at once, liquidate it over 10 years or in 10 years. Fact of the matter is, the amount of income tax that will result from that the government will get will be far more than they would have gotten had we been able to stretch it for a longer period of time. And now we have the risk of chronic illness. Herb touched on chronic illness, and he talked about medical costs and not necessarily chronic illness, otherwise known as long-term care costs. I'll address that a little bit and kind of expand on what Herb said. So yes, it's true. Chronic illness costs, nursing home costs can get into the, $8,000 to $20,000 a month, depending on where you live. If you want to be in a posh nursing home in New York, it could push $20,000 a month. Again, in different parts of the country, those costs are different. Suffice it to say, chronic illness and long-term care costs are very significant, and combine that with the fact that your family members that are involved are under duress while they're trying to help situate their loved one in that situation. It can take away from the nest egg and retirement assets very quickly in the event of chronic illness. So one of the things that life insurance can do is to help mitigate the costs of chronic illness with certain riders that are available. And of course, a life insurance strategy for that IRA that the clients no longer need for income, it can be leveraged to create a bigger and better legacy for their loved ones. So the legacy advantage strategy, the way that it works is that we can show a consumer how to transfer the value, whether it's in a lump sum or over a few number of years or over a longer period of time, to transfer the assets or the value of an IRA into a properly designed life insurance contract, which will magnify and enhance the value for heirs. Some things to keep in mind in why this works. Oftentimes we look at the IRS and the tax code as something that works against us. And in a lot of ways it does, except when it comes to life insurance. There are very important tax codes that govern life insurance that make it a very advantageous product to own. One of those tax codes is Section 101A that you can see on the left-hand border of this page. Section 101A of the tax code says that life insurance proceeds are received tax-free by beneficiaries. There's another section of the tax code that suggests that something called an accelerated death benefit rider can be added to a life insurance policy to give it a second purpose. Most people look at life insurance as something that isn't for me. It's for somebody else. It's for when I pass away, the money goes to my children, grandchildren, or heirs. But with an accelerated death benefit rider, that life insurance policy can be used while the insured is alive if they become chronically ill. Herb mentioned long-term care insurance. Chronic illness and long-term care are kind of interchangeable terms, and they mean the same thing, which is caring for someone Should they have a condition that it prevents them from performing 2 out of 6 activities of daily living, or they have a severe cognitive impairment that requires that they need constant supervision and care. And again, a rider on a life insurance policy can activate those funds in a different way to use for that care while the client is alive. So with the strategy, the way that it works, and you'll see it a little bit more in the case study, is we'll show a client how to take a withdrawal from an IRA. Again, I keep stressing, it's an IRA that they don't need, that they have already earmarked for legacy planning, that they are going to leave to their heirs. They don't need it. They don't want it. It's to be inherited by somebody else. So if it's to be inherited by somebody else, and we can find a way to make it more than it is today, that's a win for the client. So what we would do is show the client how to take a withdrawal from the IRA and transfer that money into a properly designed life insurance policy, and in many cases with the chronic illness rider, so that it's got a second purpose if the client gets sick. And when we look at the numbers and project it out to life expectancy, what we're able to demonstrate is that the life insurance policy transferring to the heirs compared to the IRA makes that legacy much greater, primarily because of the tax law and because of the tax code. The taxes due on a qualified asset, which is what an IRA is, significantly reduce its value. Let's go back here for a second. Got a page ahead of myself. We'll see that in a chart after the case study on what the effects of taxes are on a qualified asset. So to better demonstrate this, let's take a look at a case study. Now, I've been talking about Judy Hill for at least 5 to 8 years as a case study. She never gets older. It's unbelievable. She still looks as good as she did 7 years ago, and magically she's still 68 years old. So Judy Hill is 68 years old. She is retired. She has 2 sons. Her and her husband managed to be savers while he was working and she was working. So she lives comfortably in her $300,000 house. She has $1 million invested with Tiby and Cetera, and they're doing very well with that. And she has a $700,000 IRA. Herb talked about defined benefit plans. Her husband had one of those, defined benefit plan with a joint and survivor 100% income, which, geez, I wish I had that. They really just don't exist anymore, unfortunately. So her defined benefit pension and her Social Security are more than enough to meet her retirement needs. She's got the fallback of the $1 million of assets invested if she needs it to supplement her income. She would certainly like to leave as much as she could to her 2 sons, William and Tyler. And she is concerned, as I think anyone 68 years old would be, about what happens if the unexpected happens? What happens if I get sick? She's got friends and acquaintances that have been in nursing homes. She's watched friends of hers care for their elderly parents, both in their homes and in nursing homes. And she's watched the financial distress that puts families under. So in her case, she's got this $700,000 IRA. We're going to assume it's earning 5%. The strategy that we've introduced to her is to take $20,000 a year out of the IRA. Now, it almost feels like it goes against what every advisor says, which is don't take that IRA money until you have to. Now, we know with the Secure Act that the age 70 and a half rule that says you have to start taking your money at 70 and a half is now age 72. She's only 68. She doesn't have to take it till she's 72. But we're going to recommend that she start taking it now. Why? Because we can take $20,000 a year now, which is actually a little bit less than the income, than the return generated, right? 5% of 700,000 is $35,000. So she would have to take more than 20 out of the IRA to pay some income tax on it and then be left with 20. But she's going to redirect the $20,000 a year into a life insurance policy for a little bit less than $650,000. And that $650,000 is going to have something called the chronic illness rider on it. So that if and when she passes away, William and Tyler are going to get the $631,000 and change tax-free, plus what's left in the IRA, and it would be subject to the normal taxes that an IRA is subject to. If she gets sick before she passes away, this is where a plan like this really shows its value. If she gets sick and needs chronic illness care, the $631,000 becomes an immediate tax-free bucket of cash for her sons to use to help her manage those healthcare expenses should she become chronically ill. Without a plan like this, where would she go to get the money for chronic illness care? She would pick up the phone, or William or Tyler would pick up the phone and call Tiby and say, Tiby, we might need to start liquidating some of that $1 million or start liquidating some of the IRA because mom needs care. And that's the phone call that nobody wants to make. And that's the phone call that nobody wants to get. With this Legacy Advantage plan, the life insurance policy becomes the tax-free bucket of money to use should Judy need chronic illness care before she dies. Little refresher on taxes. We hit on this a little bit earlier. We know that assets that we have today, mutual funds, stocks, CDs, cash, those are taxed today. We pay income taxes, we pay capital gains taxes. They get a step up in basis at death. The IRA is a tax deferred asset. We don't pay taxes when it's growing, but we do get taxed on it at death. And you can see at the pie chart that a significant portion of a qualified asset is lost to taxes, right? If the $700,000 IRA was actually still worth $700 at Judy's death, almost 40% of it goes away, goes to Uncle Sam for taxes. So it's an asset she didn't need today anyway. She told us it was being left as a legacy asset anyway. So our strategy leverages the taxable asset into a tax-free asset. The life insurance death benefit is tax-free. So at the time of her death, if she didn't get sick beforehand, the $630,000 and change of death benefit would be tax-free to William and Tyler, and they would add to it whatever the value is left in the IRA. So this program is going to leave a larger legacy to her sons, which is exactly what she wanted to do. And it's going to give, a bonus on top of that in having that safety net of the amount of money that's available for chronic illness care should she need it. A lot of folks own long-term care insurance today, and the long-term care industry has changed a lot over the 20 years. There really aren't many individual long-term care products available today, at least not as many as there were 20 years ago. And those products have some different characteristics in terms of the pricing of them and the fact that the pricing is not guaranteed. If any of the folks on the line have or know of family members that have traditional long-term care insurance, they've probably experienced rate increases in the past. So the Legacy Advantage program of having a rider on a life insurance policy gives a little more stability to that benefit, because you wouldn't have the risk of a price increase, because the rider is attached to a life insurance policy, which, if properly designed, will have a guaranteed premium. So some of the discussion items to have with consumers, again, to qualify them if they're candidates for using that asset for a Legacy Advantage plan. Again, do they need the IRA money to live off of? If they do, this is not for them. If they don't, this is an option. Are they prepared for chronic illness? Have the conversation. You know, what would happen if they were no longer to perform 2 out of 6 activities of daily living? What would happen if they had to go into a nursing home? Where is the money going to come from? And you can show them a way to have double duty dollars on a life insurance policy to be available for chronic illness care. So we talked about who the candidates are. We talked about how Legacy Advantage works, and we went through a typical case study of a great prospect in Judy Hill. So what's next? What's next is to engage Tiby, and in turn, she'll engage us. Have the conversation about what you want to leave as a legacy to your children and grandchildren, and what your income needs are, and what your retirement assets are consisted of, and if you have a legacy asset that might be a candidate for leveraging. And Tiby will consult with us, and we'll help walk you down the path of seeing if you can qualify and implement a Legacy Advantage plan. So with that, I'm going to stop the screen share, and I'll turn it back over to Tiby, and also open it up for any questions about this program.
Thank you so much, Adam,
Thank
for
you.
your presentation. And certainly, life insurance is a very good thing to have for a number of reasons. You touched on many of them. And if anybody have any questions, put that in the chat box for us, and we can address them either at the end of the next presentation, which will come from me. So we'll give you a moment to put your questions in the chat box. Okay, I don't see any questions right now. Okay. No more. If there aren't any questions, then I will start with the next segment of the presentation here. Let me just bring up my okay. I want to share with you my website. Okay, are you able to see my website? I think that Prudential gave excellent presentations. I'm really glad that they joined me today. My website, I'm really proud of it because there's a lot of resources on this site that you can draw from. In the Abouts tab, it tells you about me, of course, but I've shared my story. Now about my product partners, just like Prudential, we have over 50 partners, including Prudential, and I'm able to provide you with any of these companies' products and services that they offer. I'm sure you're familiar with many of these companies because some of them your pension and retirement plan is managed by these corporations. And there's some companies that are not on the list, but as you can see, there are many household names here on this list. All right. Now, the other thing is the products and services that I'm able to offer you. Adam touched on the life insurance. Of course, I can offer you life insurance products, structured products, annuities. Herb talked about annuities, so I'm able to offer you annuity products, index annuities to solve your financial needs and goals. These are some of the investments. As I mentioned to you earlier, I'm able to offer you anything that's available out there other than real estate. I cannot sell real estate, but any investments I can offer you because my licenses allow me to do so. I'm able to create a financial plan for you, and that's an engagement that we would discuss based on your needs, and we would look at the scope of it, and we would discuss what my obligations would be to you. It's a contractual agreement, and just like you visit with an attorney, he would discuss what he can offer you and the fee, and then we create plans, etc. Now, one of the things that I'm really proud of on this website, is that we have, in addition to the product partners, I have a team that I work with at Cetera. Now, our team, the Chief Financial Investment Officer is Gene Goldman. Now, he's been in the industry for over 26 years, and you may have seen him on the various media outlets, including CNBC, the New York Times. He's been talked about across the industry. I mean, he's really a brilliant man, and everybody listens to his commentaries. Now, this is his team, and they do the research for us to help narrow down what are the strongest programs that we have available to us from our product partners. So it makes our job a little easier to determine what we should be recommending to our clients. In addition, there's a lot of resources here. You can navigate through it because at the end of the day, of course, I'm here to help you. And what you can do is contact me, put your email information, your phone number, your questions that you may have by visiting this website. Now, the ATS strategy is one of the things that we use, which is similar to what you heard from Herb and Adam, because this is a strategy that's based on academic research. Herb was addressing the lifetime income strategy, where you would have a guaranteed income over your lifetime, because as he indicated, if you wanted some guarantees, the traditional bonds and CDs, they're not giving you the type of returns that you would have to outpace inflation. Well, if you have an annuity where it's a contractual agreement, the insurance company like Prudential would provide you with a guaranteed income over your lifetime. This is, as I said, based on academic research, and Herb mentioned it too on various papers. So we match with this strategy, we match your assets with your liabilities or your expenses so that you would have a portion of your retirement assets in each of these categories. Like alternatives is everything other than cash, stocks, and bonds. So this is a bucket that you would have money in over a 15-year period. And then you have, of course, the other buckets that traditionally everybody can offer you that, but this is our proprietary strategy and everybody doesn't do it the same way that we do it. So we're really excited about what we offer our clients, because certainly everything that I do is going to be in your best interest. And I've been doing this now for, oh my goodness, over 30 years. But I've been in the industry now, coming up on 40 years. My time has really flown by. But now the other part of my website that I want to show you is how to contact me. Okay, you can contact me by just clicking on the contact tab and filling out this and send me any questions that you may have, or you can actually navigate to schedule an appointment with me. So spend some time using my website, and I think that this will allow you to know who I am when we sit down and discuss your goals and needs. And there's no reason why you shouldn't have a financial advisor, because just like with everything else in life, you plan for your weddings, you plan for graduations, you plan for showers. You should have a plan and a strategy for your most significant event that you will experience in life, and that's retirement. You plan to get an education, you plan for all of those things. So why not have a plan in place for retirement? Now, I'm going to talk to you about our retirement strategy, and I just need to pull that up. Bear with me. You know, nowhere in my presentation that I said I was tech savvy. I said my grandson was. So I'm going to pull up some other information, and I'm going to need to stop sharing the other screen. Just a moment. Just a moment. I'm going to navigate to this other screen for you. Okay. All right. Just a second. And I'm going to stop sharing I'm going to share my screen, but I'm going to take my camera off so you won't have to see my forehead, because I have to get a little closer to the screen to read some of the notes that I have. So I apologize for that, but that's what I need to do. So I'm going to share my screen. Hold on, please. Okay. Can you see the screen with the preparing for retirement? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, I hope you can see the screen that says preparing for retirement. Just a second. Okay, and okay, I hope you can see my screen. All right, we're going to talk about retirement, preparing for retirement. As I mentioned before, I've been in the industry for over 30 years. And at Cetera, we work with you to help you plan your legacy, no matter where you are in life. We take the long view with fresh thinking and personalized approach. So when I sit down with you, I look at your entire situation. I ask a lot of questions. Some of them you may not want to answer them, but just like anything else, if you were to go to a doctor and talk to him and didn't provide all the information to him, he may not be able to give you the best solution to your problem. So the same thing occurs with me. So we look at everything in your entire situation. A lot of things, Herb, and you heard from Herb and Adam. So some of the things I'm going to skip in my presentation, but why prepare for retirement now? You want to get more for your retirement today because it's about, excuse me, some water. It's simple. You can get more out of your retirement years, more time, more chance to do what's important to you. And that freedom comes with doing the planning now. Today's workshop will help you to understand retirement and what it takes to be ready for life after work. As part of your preparation for retirement, you'll earn and spend and save money in ways that's more meaningful to you. The big questions: why, how, when, who, and where. You probably had a lot of plans for how you are going to spend your retirement. Maybe a house project, maybe hobbies you want to start, or spend more time on maybe travel or spending more time with family. Whatever it is, we're here today to talk about preparing financially. To be fully prepared, we need to ask the tough questions and really think about the answers. The questions will be familiar to you, but I want you to really think about them. Why do you want to retire? How do you want to retire? When do you want to retire? Who do you want to retire with? And where do you want to retire? So the why I want to retire. There are two components to the why retirement: emotional and strategic. As I said, the emotional aspect of and planning of retirement are up to you. Your financial strategy should address this aspect. So why do you want to retire? Some of the common reasons are on the screen. Short timer syndrome. You're tired of working. You want to be done. Health issues. Sometimes health issues makes it difficult or impossible to continue working. Quality of life. Retirement may allow you to move or otherwise make changes to your lifestyle. Family. Many people want to spend more time with family, take care of their family members, or perhaps move closer to where they live. How you answer these questions of why will affect your retirement readiness. It is important to retire for the right reason. So people, when they retire, they find they are bored and want to return to work. This is because they don't really think about the why of retirement, or they think about retirement as a one-time event rather than a lifestyle change. There's no wrong reason to retire, but make sure you are prepared for the reality of a life after work. How? How do I want to retire? When you thought about your why, that's probably include how. How do you want to spend your retirement? Will you continue to work? Perhaps you will work part-time or spend more time volunteering. Some people want their retirement to start with or be the vacation of a lifetime. Once you have determined how you will retire, you can consider how you will pay for it. One common reason people fail at retirement and have to go back to work, that they run out of money. The rule of thumb is to plan for 70 to 85% of your pre-retirement income. If you plan to do something like move to a more expensive location or travel a lot, you will probably need to be on a higher end of the scale. And remember that your how might change. Retirement lasts sometimes 30 years or more. Your needs and your obligation will change over that 30 years. Just as they have over the rest of your life, There are retirement calculators that can help you personalize your retirement plan for your expenses and the proposed lifestyle. When do I want to retire? In some way, this is the hardest question to answer. Many of you may be saying as soon as possible, and sometimes, especially in the case of health or job loss, you might not have a choice to when you can retire. If you do have a choice, make sure you consider the when and how the timing will impact the other aspect of your retirement. According to the 2018 Gallup poll, most American planned retirement age is somewhere around 66, which is up from age 63 in 2002. And the reality is that the average retirement age has stayed at 61 since 2011. One of the primary reasons to delay retirement in addition to continuing to work or receiving a paycheck, is to collect higher monthly Social Security payments. If you claim early, you may get as little as 75% of your full amount you are entitled to. If your spouse will draw off of the Social Security, they will get a reduced benefit as well. Once you start drawing Social Security, you cannot revoke your decision. According to the Social Security Administration, the average monthly Social Security retirement benefits for 2018 was approximately $1,400 for retired workers and $1,300 for surviving spouse. Of course, Social Security is not your only or even your main source of retirement income, but as we'll discuss later, it is definitely a factor in your overall retirement plan. Who do I want to share my retirement income with? You may want to provide financial or others, such as support to a spouse or a child, or even during the retirement or at your death. This will affect your choice. Couples who reach age 65 have a 50% chance of at least one spouse passing age 90. So if you plan to support your spouse fully in retirement, you must plan for that. Decide if you want to spend your last dollar on your last days, or if you want to have and leave a legacy behind for someone. If you want to leave a legacy, I recommend speaking with an attorney to ensure that you have everything set up properly. Another thing you probably need to discuss if you want to leave a legacy is life insurance. And that's why I invited Adam today to discuss that with you. Life insurance is something that will be there for your survivors, even when you're not. This money can be used for living expenses, the day-to-day needs, or for life happy moments such as traveling, a child or a grandchild graduation from college, or your sons and daughters' wedding, grandchildren, things that you want to do with your grandchildren. So having the life insurance is definitely a plus. If you're not here to keep working and keep earning, and you have nothing to leave them, how do they get the help they need with the expenses that comes along with these moments? To achieve your retirement readiness goal, your family needs both time and money. Life insurance is designed to provide for your beneficiaries should you run out of time. We can help you develop strategies designed to have the money you need for these events. And if you're committed, there's a better chance you'll be financially prepared for your future. If you have or have not, then you should. Now, the threats, Adam and Herb both discuss the threats that occur during retirement. But I'm going to share with you my perspective as well. Where do you want to live in retirement? Will you stay in your current home or will you move? Do you want to be close to your family or perhaps be a snowbird? Sometimes retirement means selling the big house and moving somewhere smaller, or perhaps buying an RV and traveling across the country. The important thing to remember about where you want to retire is that different states and even different cities or different counties have different costs, different tax rules for residents and non-residents, and other factors that may determine the quality of life when you get there. It is better to start your research earlier so that you can consider the various locations. There are many studies and articles out there that can help you determine the best retirement location for your specific needs. One I like to recommend is Where to Retire magazine, which can be found online. Now, and also you want to take into consideration is wherever you move, the tax implication on your retirement. So if you move to a state that you didn't earn the income in that state, you want to take a look at what your liabilities will be. Now, once you've answered the big questions about retirement, you can start specific planning. Two of the greatest threats to retirement are insufficient savings and inflation. Insufficient savings is something you should address before retirement starts. There are four main ways to address insufficient savings: saving more aggressively for a higher return, work longer, or reduce your retirement lifestyle goal. As you can see, some of these methods are more attractive than others. So it's best to plan while you still have the choice. The other big threat is inflation. Inflation is guaranteed part of everyone's financial future. What used to cost $100 in 1999 would now cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $156 in July 2019. You have to plan for inflation to impact the cost of your retirement. Life expectancy. One reason for planning ahead is so important is that life expectancy are climbing, which means longer retirements and longer periods of time that you will need a reliable income. The chart shows that life expectancy for a couple at 65 years old, the odds of one of them getting to age 80 remains about 15 years or more in retirement. So as good as long life expectancy is, it does not increase the risk of running out of money. Consider the sum of 80,000 Americans turned 100 in 2010. By the year 2030, the number will climb to more than 200,000. The chances are better than ever that you and your spouse will live past the century mark. It is hard to plan for what life will look like at age 100, but preparing financially can help ensure that you have more options. Wanting money to last a lifetime is something everyone can understand. What may be less known is just how fast a nest egg can be empty. Even with a modest annual withdrawal rate, one retirement income strategy suggests that you can withdraw a specific percentage of your retirement savings each year, and If it is modest enough, your savings may be enough for retirement, but considering the retirements are getting longer, that approach may no longer work. Even if you withdraw a modest 5% from your nest egg each year, your retirement portfolio may not last a lifetime. It is hard to predict the inflation rate next year, let alone over the entire retirement. According to the inflation.com, over the past 20 years, inflation have averaged 3% a year. Given enough time, even this relatively benign rate can have a drastic effect on how much annual income you will need just to keep pace with inflation. Retirement expenses, retirement is expensive enough. With inflation, the cost can be stagnating. Example, a $5 meal 3 times a day over 20 years will cost upwards of $219,000. Added a modest 3% annual inflation rate, and the cost swells over to $294,000. Ignore inflation, you risk either running out of money or making some sacrifice to your lifestyle later in life. Factor savings, withdrawal, inflation, and other aspects of your retirement into your plan. Excuse me. When it comes to making sure you have enough enough to retire, consider the benefits of waiting. Most people tend to minimize the value of Social Security. If they understand that they are likely to get something back from the system at all, they think it will be a minimum amount. Not really enough to count on, but Social Security is far more valuable than most people realize. First, Social Security is one of the few sources of income you can't outlive. If you worry about running out of personal assets in your old age, you need not have that fear with Social Security, because it continues when you die, until you die, and even supports your spouse after you die. And of course, the longer you live, the more you will extract from the system. Social Security may be one of the only resources of retirement income that offer annual inflation adjustments, called COLA. If your benefit starts out at $2,000 per month, and if an annual COLA rate is around 2.7%, in 10 years, you will receive somewhere around $2,600 per month. In 20 years, your benefits will be $3,400 a month, and in 30 years, your check should be around $4,400 a month. So if you live 10 more years, you will receive over $300,000 in lifetime benefits. If you live 20 more years, you'll receive $600 in lifetime benefits, and if you live 30 years, you'll receive over $1 million over your lifetime. This assumes an annual cost of living rate of 2.7%. There's no way of knowing exactly what the COLA will be, but 2.7 seems to be a reasonable estimate. If what the Social Security trustees use to project costs and benefits under this intermediate cost scenario, full retirement age is the age which you can claim full unreduced benefits. Your primary insurance amount, or PIA, is the benefits you will receive at full retirement. Full retirement age used to be 65 for everyone, but now we are seeing a higher full retirement age phase in. For everyone born in 1943 and 1954, full retirement age is 66. For everyone born in 1960 and later, full retirement is 67. For those born in 55 to 59, full retirement is 66 plus some number of months. So what happens if you apply for Social Security before full retirement? Your benefits will be reduced. You will receive a percentage of your PIA depending on when you apply. If the full retirement age is 66 and you apply at 62, you will receive 75% of your PIA. And at 63, 80%, and so on. If your full retirement age is 67 and you apply at 62, you'll receive 70% of the PIA. These amounts are actually prorated monthly, so you can apply anytime after 62 and your benefits will be reduced by the appropriate amount. If you apply for Social Security after full retirement age, you will earn a delay credit of 8% for each year you delay. So if your full retirement is 66 and you apply at 67, your benefits will be 108% of the PIA. And at 68, it would be 116%, and so on. So after age 70, you can't earn any more delay credits. So it doesn't pay to wait until after 70 to apply for Social Security. Social Security was instituted in an earlier era when most married women did not work to give lower earning spouse a measure of financial security in their old age. The program offers spousal benefits. The spousal benefit is 50% of the worker's PIA if applied for in the full retirement age. So if John PIA is 2,000 and Jane PIA is 800, and if Jane applied for the Social Security at her full retirement age, her benefits will equal 50% of John's PIA, or $1,000. This is $200 more than her benefit based on her own work record. However, spousal benefits are not just for women who earn less than their spouse. Anyone who is married can claim spousal benefit. If you are a widow and were married for more than 10 years but are now divorced, you can still claim Social Security benefits based on your spouse's work record. I have some tools that can help you determine your potential Social Security payment, as well as ways to maximize those payments. If you are interested in learning more, please speak to me after this session is over for more information or handout. When planning for retirement, it is important to consider the amount you have saved, the amount you will withdraw, the impact of inflation, Social Security, and other factors. This is where professional guidance can help. Let me give you one example. The riskier asset class, such as equities or stocks, generally offer potential for higher returns, but also for potential for bigger losses. They are subject to greater swings in their performance. This greater volatility can make it hard to stick with these investments during the time of unfavorable performance. It makes no sense to put all your assets in a higher risk investment if you won't be able to sleep at night, or you will be rushed out of the investment at the first downturn of the market, fear of losing. Our approach as investment professional is to discuss your goals, your risk tolerance, and how your risk, how much risk you can stand, and to take a look at the time horizon and how to meet a particular financial goal. An individual might save for your children's college education, or for retirement, or for other personal circumstances that has an end date. While there are some general rules, allocation is a very personal thing, and your pie chart may be very different from someone else in a similar circumstance. You might be very conservative, a young investor, or a very aggressive older investor. Asset allocation lets you match your investments exactly how you feel about investment risks for a particular financial goal. These are some of the issues we can explore when you and I are working together. Only you can answer your why, how, when, who, and where of your retirement. Once you have these questions answered, you are ready to start your retirement journey. Your choice, your destination, your goals, and make decisions that will help you arrive safely and as close to on time as possible. You might choose to plot your own course, calculate fuel needed, adjust your for weather condition and all the other variables, or you might realize that a professional navigator could do much of the research and detail work for you so that you can spend more of your time enjoying life. The navigator brings knowledge and experience to the table, answer your questions, and give you personalized guidance. But you are always free to use the input or not. Often, one or more important reasons for using a financial professional is that the financial professional is less likely to be portrayed by emotions when considering strategic options. Too often, investors react to short-term occurrence and the euphoria or fear that the climate creates. Working with a caring and knowledgeable professional gives you something to someone to talk things through with, so there's less of a chance that the decisions are based on flawed logic or emotion or greed or fear. A good financial professional will give you get to know you, your facts and feelings, and help you to create and implement a sound, customized, long-term strategy and help you stick to it instead of following often a destructive pack herd emotion of crowd. Some of the tools that we bring to the table include retirement needs calculators, survivors needs worksheets, asset allocations, strategies. In addition, if you're interested in working with me and my team, please complete the email box and put your questions. Give me some background information or just some generic information about when you plan to retire or where you are in your career and your career path. So this is my discussion on preparing for retirement. So with all the financial turmoil of the past few years, there have been at least one positive that has emerged, Most of us have come to realize that we can't take our financial future well-being for granted. We have to prepare for it. We must know where we are in our preparation. Retirement is not just a question for those over 50. The more we prepare now, the more likely we are to succeed. So are you going to continue your journey of preparing for retirement? Preparing for retirement is one step in preparing financially for your future and your life. There are many rules of thumb for what you will need at retirement, including a common guide of the 70-85 of your financial working income. You can be better prepared by answering the big questions about why do I want to retire, how I'm going to retire, when do I want to retire, who I want to share my retirement with, and where do I want to retire. So that's the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, certainly I would be glad to answer them. You can put them in the chat box. Again, I need your information, who attended this event, because I have to share and report that to my compliance department. And I want to thank you all for attending. I want to thank Adam and Herb for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that we're able to do more of them. And also I want to thank ASALH, Danielle Taylor, for being so diligent with me and helping me to coordinate this event, as well as Sylvia Cyrus. She's been wonderful too, and all the other support staff. Thank you. And if you don't have any questions, I hope you all have a great day. I'm Tiby Saunders with Cetera Investors out of Philadelphia. Thank you.